to quickly hand it over to Steve Dale and our partners and presenters here, Partners in Planning. I love the title of this. If your attorney or trustee does not know the difference between an IPP and an SUV, we have a problem. Steve, hand it over to you.
I'm so excited about this presentation here, and also with our panelists that are going to be joining us today. Because of time, I'm going to spend as little time as possible as far as introductions. We'll let the folks introduce themselves, but once again, a lot of work has been put into this. I want to especially thank the May and Stanley Smith Trust, which for this session and the next session, without their support, we would never have been able to get as far as we have. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Steve Eidelman, hear about some really exciting work that they've been doing at the University of Delaware.
Well, good to be here. And I think I was at the first ARC UCP public policy conference way back when I worked for the ARC. So I'm joined by Caitlin Bailey, who's the Director of Research and Evaluation at the National Leadership Consortium on Developmental Disabilities. We're a consortium of 18 national organizations that focuses on preparing the next generation of organizational leaders. And we were approached by the May and Stanley Smith Charitable Trust, an organization with whom we have a relationship, a long-standing relationship, and to do some background work and some research on future financial planning. And we know that we don't have a culture of saving in the United States. Only about 25% of adults, all adults, have a financial plan for the future. So it's not widespread and wide known. Let's go to the next slide. So,
Steve, before we get too deep into the slides, I just want to read a quick note to make sure everyone knows that this session is being co-sponsored by the Golden State Pool Trust and is eligible for the minimum continuing legal education credits. The MCLE credit is approved by the State Bar of California and the North Bay Housing Coalition. We will read a code during the session, and you must include it in your post-session survey for credit. So thank you very much.
So future financial planning is just taking steps to make sure you have the money and services you need in the future. And you heard Nicole Jorg talk a little bit about Medicaid. And Medicaid does a lot for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, but it's also a poverty program, and it pretty much keeps you poor. Able accounts and first-party trusts and third-party trusts and pool trusts are a way to protect yourself financially in the future. Next slide, please. So we involved a lot of people. We followed up on the good work that's done by the ARC in the United States on future financial planning. And we talked to people with disabilities, talked to family members, we talked to financial experts, we talked to legal experts, we talked to people knowledgeable about financial planning for people with disabilities, and we talked to people who work with and support people with disabilities, DSPs, case managers, agency leaders, etc. Next slide, please. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at another computer with my notes. Can't figure out how to have the notes in one place and slide in another. So we wanted to know who is or is not engaging in future financial planning, if there are differences relating to demographics or individual characteristics, how people are currently or plan to save for the future, what people know and don't know. I think don't know is as important as know about future financial planning. What helps and hinders people with disabilities and families, what holds people back, why people do or don't engage in future financial planning, the characteristics of people when people with disabilities do and should start future financial planning, because that's an area that's relatively unexplored, and what people feel about the abilities of people with disabilities themselves to engage in their finances and the financial planning process. All this was to inform the next steps or what is needed to enhance people's experience and success with future financial planning. Next slide, please. So we did a bunch of interviews with people, and I sat in on a bunch of them, and it was just fascinating listening to experts and people with experience from all those sample categories. Some people had a very good idea as to what needed to be done, and other people, it was just the luck of the draw, especially with family members, how they got a future financial plan depending on who they talked to first, rather than any systemic way of approaching that. Let's go to the next slide. So we did a survey. Let me pull this up. And we got almost 6,000 responses. We're in the process of cleaning the data, and data, when you do a big survey like that, is not all filled out properly. So we'll probably have fewer, but probably close to 5,000 when we're done. And we did the survey over the summer in 2020. And by the fall, we started developing this survey and getting it out to the field. And the ARC of the United States was very helpful, as was UCP, in getting it out to the field. Let's go to the next slide. So barriers, it would be nice if there weren't any, but there are a lot. And the barriers confirm what experts on this panel know, that future financial planning is complex. There's not enough support to help people with disabilities and their families access and navigate the different systems, rules, and services needed. We heard a lot of horror stories. I won't bore you with them here, but people being taken advantage of, not because people were being dishonest, but because people just were selling a product that wasn't right for people. Based on what we've learned, we organized the barriers people with disabilities face and their families face into these categories: mindset, values, family issues, societal issues, professional issues, legal and financial issues, government issues, and then context. So this could be a 2-hour presentation just on these barriers, and we won't sort of bore you with that, but it almost seems like what you end up with as in a financial plan for the future depends on who you talk to first. And that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that depending on where you live or who you happen to know, you get a plan developed without the best advice possible. We know that families don't plan early enough. They plan in crisis situations. And that's even more critical for people with disabilities and their families. We know people with disabilities and their families need more outreach to connect them with quality resources that will help them plan for their own and their loved ones' financial futures. Many people do not know when and with whom to begin future financial planning. So again, it's almost the luck of the draw, and what might be needed in the field is sort of a no wrong door approach, where no matter where you go in, you get steered to somebody who will give you expert advice. And we know that people with disabilities are vulnerable and can be taken advantage of. So next slide. So there's longstanding expectations that people with disabilities need to be poor to receive and maintain benefits. And again, Medicaid is a poverty-based program. And SSI is a poverty-based program. And we know families and people with disabilities are very worried about doing something that would injure their SSI and Medicaid eligibility. And again, there's no savings culture in the United States. We save less as a percentage of our gross income than most of the other nations in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in the developed countries of the world. Next slide, please. There's some expectations that the disability services sector is going to meet all of everyone's needs. And when you talk to people who provide services, they've seen the support that they get to provide those services erode over the years. They've seen great staffing issues and challenges. So that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And we're learning to, I said, through the great advocacy of the ARC and other organizations, we're learning to provide support and to shore up that support, but it's not enough. It's not enough to assure a good life. It's enough to assure sort of a minimally decent life. I had a public official in a state not to be mentioned saying to me, all our responsibility is towards people with disabilities are 3 hots and a cot. Sort of the same thing we do for prisoners. Doesn't seem right. Next slide, please. So there are lots of systems issues as well. Integration and collaboration between systems. Disability service providers, by and large, don't have expertise in future financial planning. That's not something they know about. And there needs to be cooperation between the disability sector, government at all levels, federal, state, and California regional centers are part of that. There's got to be education for people with disabilities and families about what the options and issues are so they can make informed decisions. SSI and benefits eligibility requirements don't set people up for financial success or financial freedom. Again, they try to keep people poor. And there's a lack of understanding and a lot of misinformation at the national level about people with disabilities, finances, and benefits requirements. Next slide, please. You know, we looked at some of the different visioning systems that are out there to do planning for people for the future, and they almost exclusively ignore financial planning. So we want to focus on building financial inclusion and participation of people with disabilities first and foremost. It's a rights issue. It's a rights issue. We need to have increased outreach to people with disabilities and their families. This is a role that the ARC certainly can play in every state and its local chapters, and UCP and its local affiliates, and regional centers and service providers. There needs to be a way of getting people up to a basic level of knowledge so they can make intelligent recommendations to families and people with disabilities about what's possible. There also needs to be increased collaboration between systems so they speak the same language. Again, right now there are multiple points of opportunity, of entry. And what we really need is a no wrong door for people with disabilities and families, that whoever they go to first is going to help them get to the right place, as opposed to whoever they go to first is going to give them a solution that may or may not be the best solution for that family and that person with a disability. We're talking about possible certification, licensing, or regulations of financial planners, attorneys, and professionals involved in the financial planning process to assure that people with disabilities and their families are more protected. Because again, if you get a person like Steve Dale giving you advice, you can take it to the bank. Ms. Chubb giving you advice, you can take it to the bank. Other people, not so much. And again, we've seen horror stories in my career. I've gotten lots and lots of phone calls and emails about, oh, we found out we're now ineligible for SSI because somebody structured a trust document wrong. AARP has a good hub for people who are elderly, and it's called Accounts That Work for You. So we might want to take a look at that as a way of sort of helping people get information that they need to help them make informed decisions. Let's go to the next slide. So we're conducting analysis of data. In April, we'll share our initial findings with people, April 27th. We'll have expert meetings in May of 2021 to create a framework for recommendations and needed next steps. And then we'll disseminate a white paper in June to share the results of the study and expert meeting. So it's going to be a state-of-the-art document. We have no horse in this race. We don't want to run anything that comes out of this. We do this as a service to the field because we care about what happens to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families going forward. And there'll be recommendations for outreach and resource dissemination, recommendations to enhance consistency across sectors, possible requirements, oversight, and a framework for guidance and support of families and professionals. So if you have questions about the project, actually ask Caitlin Bailey, cebailey@udel.edu, or Corey Gilden, cgilden@udel.edu. If you ask me, I'll just refer you to them, and it takes longer. So I know that was a lot of information in a little bit of time, but I also know we're pressed with time. This presentation will be available to you. I said it's being recorded, and you can have a hard copy as well, or electronic copy. And we're glad to answer questions going forward. We're excited about analyzing the results of the survey, and we're excited about this white paper that hopefully will inform the field. So thank you for having us.
Okay, and I know we're taking a second so that Teresa Anderson could be on. We'll give it just a minute.
Hey, okay. Well, that was great. Professor Eidelman, always a pleasure to see you and hear you. I'm really looking forward to that white paper. That's exciting. With that, I would love to, as you all heard earlier from Mr. Picon, we have a wonderful lineup. And next, it's my pleasure to introduce Leandra Mccormick. Ms. McCormick is a California licensed professional fiduciary and daily money manager with over 25 years of experience in business and financial services. In addition, she's currently the vice president of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. And we are looking forward to learning more about Ms. McCormick and really what a fiduciary is, how fiduciaries can help support the future planning process, and for people with, for individuals with IDD and their families, as well as what resources are available for people who may be interested in learning more about the role and perhaps even becoming a fiduciary. Welcome, Ms. McCormick.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I so appreciate it. Again, my name is Leandra Mccormick, and I am a California licensed professional fiduciary, and I serve on the board as a vice president right now for the Professional Association of Fiduciaries for the state of California. And we are really excited to be joining and partnering in this particular conference because it's so important and it's very dear to my heart. I want to start with saying that a fiduciary as a licensed fiduciary is someone who's been usually appointed by a court or hired privately. We are oftentimes referred to a family by an attorney who is drafting a trust, and we have an agreement, and we work with within that trust document to be a support and to maintain whatever's in the trust and maintain the client's benefits. A fiduciary is basically someone whose boots are a captain of the ship and boots on the ground. We are people who have to serve and protect the client, and also to make sure that the benefits are not endangered in any way with spending and trying to meet the client's needs. I know when listening to the presentation earlier, it is so difficult sometimes to see that there's money available and yet our clients are living in almost poverty levels. But, and I'm so excited that this particular conference would have the opportunity for us to maybe find ways to begin to lift these families out of that and find ways to use the benefits that will really enhance their lives. So often people think of fiduciaries as just a checkbook writer, but in our role as private fiduciaries, we really are required and mandated to financially invest and engage in financial planning with the families that we serve. We also work with closely monitor the health and the well-being of our clients. And the professional fiduciary also provides a more in-depth relationship than a bank trust department would in managing and guiding the financial needs and paying for items that are available for our clients to use. We also partner with regional centers. We partner with our attorneys. So with that, and then also the other part of PFAC is that we are a resource for education. And in just the last 2 years in working, we are creating educational opportunities for fiduciaries and attorneys and CPAs to understand what a special needs trust is and the intricacies of it, to the details of it. And then we're also working now on a financial certification program that goes out to our membership. Our goal is to educate and raise up understanding and better practices for all of the fiduciaries that belong to our particular organization. And with that, I need to turn it over back to Steve. Maybe not. So
actually, while we're doing this, here, our next panelist here is Heather Chubb. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to put my video on. I am sorry. I have to tell you, as an advocate, as an attorney, and as a fiduciary myself, we have to be able to adjust here to situations. Anyway, so we go back to this here. It's my pleasure to introduce Heather Chubb. Ms. Chubb is a life transition lawyer and a member of the National Academy of Elderlaw attorneys. And The Chubb Law Firm has over 20 years of experience and specializes in a wide range of estate planning, long-term care, special needs trust planning, and assistance with administration, and so much more. Here, we're looking forward to learning more about what a life transition attorney does, how life transition attorneys can support future plannings for individuals with IDD and their families, as well as what exactly is the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys and how can we get more information. Thank you for joining us here today.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for that introduction and for the opportunity to be part of this panel today. I'm really excited. It's the first time I have been involved in this conference. Life transition attorney is, I guess I would say, a special kind of estate planning attorney. And we really look at the whole family situation. We provide lots of education to our clients and those families. And for our families with IDD, we are looking at two pieces of the spectrum. So we look at planning for the parents, what is going to happen when they are no longer there to support their loved one with IDD, and what's going to happen in the future. And as Professor Eidelman talked about, many people are not prepared. They haven't done the financial planning. We help with the legal planning that's associated with that. The other piece of our practice deals with the person with IDD themselves and how to evaluate the kind of supports that they need. By that, I mean, is conservatorship appropriate? Oftentimes we hear that's the way to go, get a conservatorship. That is often not the best way to go. We want them to have supported decision-making to the extent that they can. Perhaps they have enough ability to make their own decisions and do powers of attorney. We always want to consider what their capabilities are first. So we're looking at whole person planning. We are also helping both the parents and the person with IDD ensure that they will continue to qualify for any government benefits that they are eligible for. Inheritances can be problematic, lawsuit settlements can be problematic, and it all stems from that initial kind of policy that these people need to be poor. And we want to be able to plan to allow them to make the most of any inheritance or settlement that they have. So that's how a life transition attorney approaches things. The National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys has a lot of like-minded attorneys. So we truly are a group of attorneys, and we provide education to attorneys, and there are resources for the public as well. And the National Academy of Estate Planning Attorneys also works on policy issues and legislation as well. It's called NAELA, and you can access their website at naela.org. And one of the features on that website is the ability to find attorneys in your local area. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Steve.
Before Steve hops back on, I just want to come in and throw out the code for this session. To receive credit, you must write down the following code: 0956. Again, 0956. Thanks so much.
And Teresa?
I need to have my video turned on. There we go. Thank you. Well, that was great information. Thank you very much, Ms. Chubb. Appreciate it. And our final panelist is Steve Dale, longtime friend and mentor. I had the wonderful opportunity to intern for him at the Dale Law Firm last summer, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot more about Social Security and Social Security Administration than I ever imagined possible. But Mr. Dale is an attorney that specializes in trust and estate planning for individuals with disabilities. Mr. Dale is a trustee with the Golden State Pooled Trust, and we are looking forward to learning more about what a pooled trust is and how it can support future planning for people and individuals with disabilities and future planning. Thank you, Steve.
Great. I'm so excited about this panel, and we put quite a bit of work into this here. As a board member of the ARC of California, an attorney that focuses solely on persons with disabilities and their families, and the trustee of over 200 persons with disabilities, I believe it's absolutely a dialogue between the advocacy community and the professional community to best serve persons with disabilities and seniors. A couple of quick thoughts. As a professional that helps persons with disabilities to use funds that supplement government-based services, for instance, the health of the Lanterman Act absolutely affects my clients and my beneficiaries here. This includes not just the availability of services, but also the quality of services. I think what Steve Eidelman said, which is really, a common thought, is that the objective is merely for folks with disabilities to subsist. And that certainly is not what we're all about here. We're really focused on quality of life. That's the objective, not merely keeping somebody alive. To best serve my clients, it's essential that we make sure that the advocacy community and the professional communities work together for the same goal, to work to support persons with disabilities to live the best life possible, free from abuse and neglect, and to assist them in the best life possible, enjoy many aspects of community living that many of us without disabilities take for granted. I want to thank Heather and Leandra for participating today, and we've already begun discussions with the ARC about how we can better work together, really take the findings from the University of Delaware here and implement them for the betterment of our communities here. And so I want to thank you guys so much. Lastly, I do want to give a shout out to Lisa Trigg and the May and Stanley Smith Trust. Without their support for this and the next panel we're going to see here, this wouldn't have been possible. This is so important here. And lastly, I do want to make a little pitch. For those of you that are looking for a great career, consider either becoming an attorney that serves persons with disabilities and seniors, or a fiduciary here. And if you're really into it, maybe you can do both. Anyway, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn this back over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Steve. I'm hoping we can also get Ms. Chubb back on the panel. Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'd like to take the next few minutes to pose a couple questions to each member of the panel. And then if we have a few minutes at the end, we'll be able to take questions during Q&A. So the first question is, you all have different and very important roles in supporting individuals with IDD and their families in future planning, but often it's hard to connect the dots between really who does what, when it should be done, and where people can find resources. What suggestions would you have for us as a statewide advocacy organization supporting individuals with IDD and their families regarding opportunities to work together with you and or your respective organizations to provide outreach and education to the community? And I will start with the way I see everybody on the screen. I'll start with Ms. McCormick, and then go to Ms. Chubb, and then Professor Eidelman, and then Mr. Dale. So we'll start with Ms. McCormick.
Yes. So I really appreciate this question. As the person who is working in the boots on the ground piece, I think that, and I've been working with Mr. Dale also, we are beginning to realize that fiduciaries need to have better understanding and work with our families in a much more personal manner. We're not just writing checks, we're also taking care of people. So what we are looking for in the policy realm is ways that will clarify pathways for us and understanding how to implement and really speed up the process of getting things done. We work with regional centers, we work with attorneys, and then we work with the families. So we're really looking to have a better way of communicating and implementing legislation that's been put in and benefits that are available for our clients.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that as well. Hopefully we can all post conference connect and establish a long time working relationship on this.
PFAC is we're already starting that process, and we're putting certificated programs in place, and we are partnering and speaking now in various elements. Part of me coming on here today is looking at partnerships so that we are speaking and talking about what fiduciaries are and take that fear out of what it is we do, and there's no reason to fear using us in a professional basis.
Great, thank you. And now to Ms. Chubb.
Great. I echo everything that Leandra said. Getting the word out about the resources that are out there, how people can connect with the trustworthy providers of services. What I find mostly with my families is they're lacking the information of when to start looking at the legal resources, and there's such a disparate array of services, they don't even really know where to go. So from a policy basis, the ARC could, we need coordinators. We need that no wrong door for our families to be able to access the services. We also need some way for people to understand who they can trust. Unfortunately, in the legal world, there are those out there that are not trustworthy, that will just take their money and not really understand what these issues are. It really does need to be looked at from a whole person perspective, not a document perspective, not putting them in a box, but what does this person really truly need? And that's where those connections really need to go.
Definitely the person-centered approach. Thank you. And I look forward to further conversations with you as well.
Yeah.
Professor Eidelman, your turn.
Well, planning's got to start way before the person with a disability is an adult, when they're a young child preferably. And we've got to find a way to do two things. And one is have that trusting relationship, someone you can go to who will give you the best advice for you and your family, as opposed to someone who can do a drop down, fill in a form, special needs trust, without having the expertise to do that. And the other is we have to also build in sort of monitoring and sort of life event stuff, so that when parents are no longer around, their wishes for their son or daughter are known, and there's somebody trustworthy to take a visit with them. I think Lisa Trigg from May and Stanley Smith's original idea was you've got a rich array of service providers in California and really nationwide. They are better equipped to sort of look in on people and see that they're getting what they need, as opposed to sort of generic case managers for the elderly who don't have disability expertise. So it's got to be a lifelong process. And again, you're entrusting your finances and your kid, if you're a parent, to somebody else's judgment. It's got to be somebody who meets some level of standards.
Yeah, very good point, because you're right. You're entrusting everything to that person. Mr. Dale.
Well, a couple of things. And, I always like to illustrate the challenge with Kathy. And as I like to say, sometimes this is the creepy part of the presentation. A senior here who has a doll by his side all the time. But for many families out there, you can imagine this. Imagine you have a 17-year-old, for instance, with autism. To my knowledge, nobody's ever died of autism. People die with autism, but not of autism. And let's say you get your plan together, and as I like to say, nobody dies in our law firm. Let's say your trust matures, which means you've passed away. That trust is likely to go for 70 years, okay? And the thing with it, when we're dealing with planning for persons with disabilities, here. And I want to echo everything that the panelists said. There are folks out there that are document sellers, or they are product sellers, or that sort of thing. That's not the kind of planning we need here. Part of folks doing this work are problem solvers, counselors, and what you shouldn't be looking at is merely buying a document. And I will try to slow down for the ASL folks. I'm really sorry, I'm racing here. But you know, part of this is ideally you're buying the experience of the law firm or the fiduciary and that kind of thing. My feeling is, in order to do the right job here and to provide for, you know, let's say Kathy, for potentially the next 70 years, let's say you pass away, this trust could go into administration for a very long time. This is something where we really all need to coordinate together here. Once again, not just for subsistence, but also for quality of life here. So there's no simple answer to this. The other part of this is, by the way, the ARC has wonderful material. I read the Monday morning memo top to bottom. It probably takes me about 7 minutes here, and I learned so much. So, you know, once again, there's so much richness of information here. And I think by working together, sharing, and participating, it's going to be a better world for all.
Thank you. We are just getting so many questions in the chat. So you guys should know that this is a very popular topic. I have one more question, and then we'll take questions from the chat if we have time. If you could change any current policy related to future planning for individuals with IDD and their families, what would it be and why? And we'll start same thing. We'll go Ms. Chubb, Ms. McCormick, Mr. Eidelman, and Mr. Dale.
So go, Heather.
Okay. That is a really, really tough question. I think perhaps one policy issue that would be really helpful to address is for those families with the children that are going to become adults. There is this period from, it seems to be when the children become about 16 to 18, the parents are getting all of this advice from various different people and maybe from the school districts, and it's all over the place. And there is no roadmap for them. Mm-hmm. And I do find there is a lack of understanding that when their child turns 18, you have to start all over with qualifications for all of the benefits. So a focus on helping with that transition, I think, would be a great place to focus on policy.
Thank you very much. Ms. McCormick?
And I'm going to piggyback onto that. That actually is one of the biggest issues that we have run into as trustees serving these clients with an IDD as they are transitioning into being adults and have needs. We find that the family had spent so much time focusing on them as infants that they don't even begin to think about this particular part of their life until it's almost too late. So I would love to see as a policy that the parents and the planners are looking at in the trust itself so that a trustee can help, because often my hands are tied and I can't do anything to help them through this process, that we would look at policy that allows us within the trust to begin the process of helping these parents plan financially and for their children's well-being as they transition into being adults at 18, and then their care, and it says, as you said, for this poor person in the wheelchair sitting on his desk for the next 70 years.
Thank you. Professor Eidelman?
I would build it into Medicaid waivers as an eligible service, financial planning, because right now the person who gets the waiver is the person with a disability, and the family is sort of a secondary consideration. And if you could have family financial planning, you know, maybe limited in time and money, but so that you could at least make sure that at that point, when the person is an adult, because most waivers go to adults, there's a plan in place. And that would require some training of case managers, because I think if you talk to the average case manager, they'd give you a sort of a blank look as to what that universe looks like. That's not their expertise. That's not what they're trained to do. That's not what human service professionals do. So we've got to have some backstop, some place where we assure it's going to happen.
And I think that's a absolutely piggybacks on what's been said around coordination and all of our organizations coordinating together to provide more information and education. Thank you. Mr. Dale?
I'll deal with one particular policy that just drives me cuckoo, which is what's called the ISM reduction. If this isn't the craziest thing around, what this has to do with is if a person with a disability on SSI gets assistance with their housing here, it could be from a special needs trust. It could be from a caring parent that is providing support for them. It could be from a family member. It doesn't matter where it comes from here, but if they're getting support for housing, oftentimes they're going to take about $190 a month reduction in their benefits because they're getting that assistance. Now, if that's not the dumbest thing you ever heard, it's hard to imagine. You would think that, you know, once again, families who step up to the table and assist their person with a disability to live a better life, that they should get incentives, they should at least get a thank you here. But there's so many of these different policies that are just wrong. And I know that the ISM reduction has been on the ARC Nationals radar screen for years. I hope in the near future that bloody thing goes away. That's one of many examples of inequities that hopefully if we can all work together, we can put a little common sense into planning for the future.
Thank you. Those are all really good answers, and also something for us to look at as a group, and how can we, you know, drive change in a collaborative manner. I think we still have a couple minutes, and there's, like I said, there's so many questions in the chat that it's really difficult to pick which to answer. So I'm just going to start at sort of what I see first. But this one says, our disabled son is 29 years old. When would you bring in a professional private fiduciary? And I will let anybody who wants to take that one take it.
Well, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I mean, I get this all the time, and Leandra, maybe you can correct me as we go into this. In a lot of cases, private fiduciaries actually don't begin serving until the parents pass away when we're talking about estate planning. But I will tell you, and you know, we just finished the session on aging. I really like it if folks will consider funding the trust and hire the private fiduciary, maybe as they're starting to age, for a number of reasons. Making that transition from the parent to the professional is a big jump for many persons with disabilities. It's so nice to be able to make that transition while you're alive, reassure your loved one with a disability that this is a natural part of living here. And also, it does give the parent a chance to see if everything is operating correctly. Leandra, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in too. Often, what really that happens is that the parents have made a plan in their financial planning. They've named a fiduciary, and that child has never met us, and so we're coming into their life at a really horrible time. Their parents have passed. It's hard, and we're coming in, and it is just it's a bad start to a bad situation. I'm with Steve. I would love to have that opportunity to start early. But the other thing that I, as a fiduciary, do is, and I'm working with attorneys, is that we try to meet with the parents that are looking to put a special needs trust together. And even if they don't fund it, we meet with the family. We meet with the person who's going to be served by us. And we talk about if it's a good fit or not. We also, and we go through an interview process. And then in my practice, I keep in contact with those families that have named us as a successor trustee for when they pass, so that we are not strangers to the family. We make a phone call once a year or once a quarter. We reach out. It's a way to begin to build that bridge. But it is something that really does need to happen. It's really difficult when the child finds out, and now here's another stranger that's in control of your money.
Well, thank you all so much. We are at time, and I wish we had a lot more time because there's so much interest and so many questions. I know that all the questions in the chat, we're going to try to get back to individuals that put questions forward. So we will be contacting each of you with questions and hopefully be able to answer some of these questions. Really, really important. Thank you all so much for being part of this today. I appreciate every bit of information that was given.